So, how many folks have friends that are architects? Raise your hand. Okay, good. A large cross-section. Then all of you know that for an architect to talk and tell a story, having 6 minutes is essentially like conducting a relationship as a speed date. So I should probably get started. I'd like to share a story about how a single project can make an enormous difference. And this is the project. It's the U.S. Mint designed by Alfred Mullett and built in 1874. And my client, Eric Christofferson, who's here in the audience, hired us and challenged us with the precept that in addition to building the City Museum for San Francisco and the Visitor Center for the city, that he was looking for the most environmentally innovative National Historic Landmark in the U.S. So after solving world hunger and bringing peace to the Middle East, we thought that this was a great opportunity to see if we could make a difference. And here's how we approached it. The Mint is actually one of the most important national landmarks in America. It had the most important civic spaces in the western U.S., and around those civic spaces were surrounded by a factory, essentially a working factory converting silver and gold into coin and bullion. At one time, it held a third of all the gold reserves in the United States of America. So a third of the wealth amassed in this country was held inside this building. And when it was designed originally, it was so progressive and forward-thinking in its building physics that when the rest of San Francisco fell and crumbled and burned around it, it stayed intact. How we approached the project was to look at the building as the most important artifact in the collection of the museum. It's an incredibly perfect example of Greek Revival classical architecture. And what Mullett did is Mullett said that he organized everything around these central public spaces. And so we took that and organized the museum and the visitor center the same way. The idea is that one would enter the front door and move to the right, and then move around these spaces in the museum, or enter the front door and be greeted, move to the left to a visitor center experience, and then move downstairs into the visitor center or museum, and then out through cultural retail, opening onto the newly revitalized Mint Plaza. As one moved up in the building, the museum and support spaces surround the courtyard, and perhaps the biggest intervention was looking at the roof as an opportunity to tell the pedagogical story of where this building sat originally, which was really at that nexus point between the upland and the wetland. San Francisco Bay's mudflats came within a few hundred yards of the building and its original origin. The way we approached this project in order to create a carbon-neutral net zero building is we looked for opportunities to platform ideas. We began by saying that saving, conservation, was a way in which we could gain a 20% reduction in energy. On top of that, we then platformed the idea of passive strategies. In a climate in which it's virtually 65 to 70 degrees throughout the year, we spend millions or billions of dollars sealing up our buildings and cooling them to 65 to 70 degrees. On top of that, we said, let's then look at active strategies or recovery strategies. And finally, at the end, would we look to self-generation and renewables? That got us to a net zero solution. Using this historical section, you can see how we began to employ ideas for passive ventilation, radiant floors to warm and cool the building to 7 feet from the floor, water storage strategies, and daylighting. Using technology. Can you tell the difference between these two slides? One is 7 photographs layered on top of each other so that one can actually see how the eye perceives not light, not how a camera would record it. The one below, the one below is a computer simulation model. And between those two, we actually verified and cross-checked so that we could make sure we could design within the limits of technology and create environments which would perform toward net zero solutions. The building had a beautiful array of furniture within it, and we used that to create ideas of gallery and exhibit space as furniture, of new floors, canopies, replacing the existing floors in the courtyard and returning it to a 3-story volume. All of them seen as special artifacts and interventions, all the way to the roof. What this meant is a project that repurposed itself, that renewed itself from yesterday to today, that rethought something that no one has been in or frankly given much consideration to for nearly 50 years. And perhaps the most important part of this story is that as we look for solutions for today and tomorrow, for our society, for our children, that most of the lessons that are critical and important are already around us, and they actually exist in the past. Thanks for your time.